So today I will be presenting my project on federalism. According to Wilson, federalism is when government authority is shared between the national government and the local government. Now, federalism is important because it has helped unify states without completely destroying all of our government power, and it also has helped limit the power of national government while also protecting the rights of our citizens. When the farmers first drafted the Constitution, the Anti-Federalists completely opposed it, and this is primarily because they believed that it gave the national government way too much power. And the reason that they believe that is because they realized the limitations of the Articles of Confederation, and thus they feared that the Constitution would sacrifice the liberty and the civic responsibility with the expansion of the national power, which really wasn't the situation, but that's the intentions that the Anti-Federalists perceived from the situation. So the Federalists prevailed over the Anti-Federalists with ratification of the Constitution, and that's how we have federalism today. And because of the federalism that we have today, our federal government now has taken responsibility in more areas that traditionally our state government would normally have responsibilities for. So that would be things such as social welfare policy, education, minimum wage, and healthcare. So as far as healthcare, that would be things such as Medicaid, Medicare, things along those lines. And then we also have our state implemented policies, which now our national government would set the direction in. So many people's first response in federalism when they hear about it is asking, why is federalism relevant? Does it even matter? And the answer is yes. The answer is always yes. Federalism honestly really matters because before Congress raised minimum wage, more than half a dozen states had it above federal standard. And for example, in Pennsylvania, kids and, well, not just kids, but anyone was making $7.15 an hour. But also federalism helped keep control of how much is paid in certain taxes, whether you can drive 55 on Magruder Boulevard or 55, 56, any really restrictions on any kind of roadways, whether or where you can buy alcohol, how much money is spent on or in school systems, whether children have or even need to have health insurance, crime and punishments in America, and that ranges anywhere from having penalties for illegal drug actions and sales and all the way to capital punishments. So federalism is always relevant and always does matter. Okay, so there are different lines of power in three systems of government. So for the first one, it's called the unitary system. And the unitary system is basically exactly what it seems like. It's unified, basically a centralized amount of government. So it's broken down into three different sections. First, you have your central government, and then you have the states, and then you have the citizens. So the unitary system is broken down into a centralized government, and the state or regional government is derived authority from the central government. So everything in the system is completely centralized, hence the name. So for the second line of power in the three systems of government, we have what's known as the Confederate system. So the Confederate system is basically broken down, and you have your state and local government, and then down below you have your citizens, and then over here you have your central government. So basically your central government and your citizens come from your state and local government. So the entire system holds power based off of the independent states. So the central government is important because of the constituent government. Basically, an example being that the United States underneath the Articles of Confederation. So basically, the United States falls underneath the Confederate system of the government. So for the final and third line of power in the three systems of government is called the federal system. So the federal system has the central government, the state and local government, and the citizens. So the way that it is set up like that is because the central and the state or local government divides the power so that they can support the citizens. So the central government and the constituent government act directly upon the citizens. And both of the governments must agree in order to go through with anything. So an example would be like Canada and the U.S., and this would be since the adoption of the Constitution. So that would be the three lines of power in the three systems. The unitary system, which is the centralized power, the confederate system, and the federal system. Alright, so a quick recap of those lines of powers and three systems of government that we just went over. So your first one is your unitary system, which is the one with the centralized power. And then you have the confederate system, which is the one where the independent states are the ones that hold the most power. And then finally we have our federal system, which is the one where the central and state or local governments divide the power so that they can support the citizens. And after this I have pictures of those charts and graphs that I pointed out with my hand to show you so that you can get a visual for the AP exam. After the Civil War, the main debate in regards to the meaning of federalism was focused around the interpretation of the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. So this debate led to the emergence of the doctrine of the dual federalism, which furthermore held that the national government was supreme and the states were equally supreme in theirs. And these two spheres, meaning that the national government and the states, of their actions should and could be kept separate. This concept implied that there were such things that Congress could regulate, which would be called interstate commerce, and things that the state could regulate, which would be called intrastate commerce, and thus the court could tell which was which. So that is basically what dual federalism was, which is pretty much what would keep the court being able to tell the difference. So, a topic that is often brought up when speaking on federalism is what competing values are at stake in federalism? And the answer to that question is equality versus participation. Now, this could go either way, but mainly it's because federalism means that citizens living in different parts of the country will be treated different. And this regards to things such as spending programs like social welfare, but also in regards to legal systems that will assign different places to different penalties, even if they have similar offenses, being in regards to hopefully enforce civil rights laws. Nevertheless, federalism means more opportunities for participation in making decisions. So that would be things along the lines of highways, school systems, government projects being built, things along those lines that were said in the beginning of the video during the Why is Federalism Relevant. But in the end, equality and participation are two huge factors in the federalism concept that often butt against each other. But to have more of one of these values without having less of the other is nearly impossible.